Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Medhurst, and I'm joined today by a very special guest. His name is Gonzalo Boye. Gonzalo Boye is a very famous lawyer based in Spain. He's represented Carles Puigdemont, the former president of Catalonia, and other politicians who support an independent Catalonia. Boye also tried extraditing George W. Bush and some other Bush officials for war crimes in Iraq. And currently, Mr. Boye also represents Pablo González, who is the Spanish journalist that we discussed the other day, who's being held in a Polish prison. And Mr. Boye, first of all, just let me thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you very much.
You know, I just like to ask you if you could maybe give us some background information, just very briefly. You know, how was Pablo González arrested? Because he's a field journalist, so he's moving between many countries, and suddenly he's arrested in Poland by the security services. What's going on here?
Well, he was in January last year. He was detained in Ukraine, and he was cross-examined by the Ukrainian Secret Service and some Spanish officials. Then he returned, following my advice, to Spain, and we offered the Spanish Secret Service to have a meeting with them. They never contact us. After that, the war broke through in Ukraine, and he went back to Poland in order to go to Ukraine to cover it. And he was arrested when he was moving on to the border between Poland and Ukraine.
So this is 5 days after the war has begun in Ukraine, right? And
exactly.
Are they actually, you know, has he actually been charged with a crime? Because there are some statements from the Polish government and so on, but what is the charge here?
Well, the charge is espionage, according to the Polish criminal law, but the facts that are attributed to him are something very strange, because they said that Pablo has been reporting in a way that is not in the best interest of Poland, and until now we have not received a single concrete act that Pablo could have done in order to be considered a spy.
So what does that mean? It's not good for Poland. I mean, it's a bit abstract, no?
Well, it's not only abstract. I assume that all journalists must be inconvenient for a country where they work. I mean, if a journalist is not inconvenient, it's like a lawyer that's liked by all the prosecutors.
Right. That's very well put. So if I understood correctly, he was classified as a quote unquote dangerous prisoner, and then they removed this designation, but he's still being treated as one. Is that correct?
No, it has not been removed. This confusion generated at a given moment. He's still in a regime of isolation. As a matter of fact, it took months, well, nearly a year, for his wife to visit him, and we have been fighting for many months in order to have a second visit of the wife, the son, and the mother. And it's very complicated for him to have communications. As a matter of fact, he only communicates with the legal team, with the lawyers in Poland and myself.
Right, so he's basically in solitary confinement, 23 hours a day, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's the best definition of his situation. And no matter what the Spanish or the Polish minister says, that's the situation.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, his wife was only able to visit him once, and even that was, like pulling teeth, essentially. And how long did it take for you to be able to visit him?
Well, it took me exactly 1 year, because I was just able to visit him this year for the first time, and I'm planning to visit him very soon again. But the problem is not only that I haven't been able to visit him, it was that the first period of time, he didn't have even a lawyer. It was appointed the state lawyer that never visited him, and then some friends of him find another lawyer, with whom it was extremely difficult to coordinate. And finally, I was able to find a good legal team who took care of his local defense, and we are coordinated. But the real problem here is that they don't respect the European law, and they don't respect the defense right. And one fundamental right is to know exactly which are the charges, which are the facts.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as to say that you are here for murder. No, you have to tell me, I'm for the murder of this person that occurred that day and in these circumstances. Then I'm able to defend myself. And I would have said, okay, but sorry, but I was not there that day. We are in a situation after a year and a half where we don't have concrete facts. And that seems to me a very unfair situation.
Yeah, there's so much wrong with this with this case, because in England, and again, England is far from perfect country or democracy, but there's a fundamental understanding that if the police don't charge you, and as you mentioned, they can't find a concrete evidence to that charge, they have to let you go after a day. I think it was extended to a week once upon a time, but with the terrorism laws they play with this. But basically, it's like you said, and I mean, Poland is like you mentioned, an EU country, and I mean, are they not violating Pablo's human rights and his rights under the European Convention on Human Rights?
Yes, they are doing that, and we have stressing that to the Polish authorities and also to the Spanish authorities, because I mean, Pablo's situation is like a complicated situation, because not only that the Polish authorities are acting wrong, the Spanish authorities are supporting that and are not saying anything. Totally the contrary.
Yeah, this is something I wanted to discuss with you, but with Pablo González's situation, every 3 months, as I understood it, they are there's a period of pre-trial detention, and they just keep extending it and extending it. So now he's been over a year in prison, in solitary confinement, most of that time without a lawyer, and also no trial, nothing is moving forward.
No, and not only that, we have not had access to the full file, which after a year and a half is more than enough time to have access to the complete file. But I have sometimes the impression that Spain has externalized with Pablo what they cannot do within the Spanish borders.
Really?
Because they're always saying, the Minister of Foreign Affairs is always saying, well, this is a delicate matter. Oh, this is a great case. This is a grave situation. Well, excuse me, but he was here in Spain most of the time.
Right.
If you have the impression that he has done something wrong, why you didn't charge him here?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is something else that you hinted at, is that he's being questioned by the security services in Ukraine, in Poland, and in Spain. So all three of them. And I'm finding it very difficult to understand this, because what has he done exactly that you have three countries interrogating him like that? It's insane. I mean, I can't understand it.
It's not only insane, but at the same time that Pablo was cross-examined in Ukraine, the Spanish Secret Service was cross-examining his wife and his mother in Barcelona and in Basque Country. So if the story that they are telling is true, this crime has been committed in many jurisdictions. Why you wait until he was in Poland to arrest him? They could have arrested him here. I mean, the Minister of Defense, who is the chief of the Secret Service in Spain, was perfectly informed, directly informed by us, that Pablo was returning to Spain. And if they want to have a conversation with him, I advise Pablo to have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I said, each citizen, in my opinion, got the obligation to speak with its own Secret Service if they so desire. Totally different is what you tell them. But to speak with the Secret Service of your own country, I think if somebody wants to ask you something, it's your duty as citizen.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. um, I think they sometimes forget that they're public servants. They've and this is not just in Spain; it's in many European countries. They're
Of course, we catch a road, which I hope that soon we will be able to turn around and go in a different direction, because in the last few years, Europe is going in a direction that maybe in 10 years or shorter, we will regret it.
Yeah. So something I wanted to ask you and to kind of clarify, because it's again so crazy. I can't believe it. Pablo González, he has two nationalities, right? And I understood that in Spain, the custom or tradition is that you put your mother's family name and your father's family name, both of them in the passport. So his Spanish passport is different, and they thought that he's engaging in espionage because he has a different name.
Well, initially, what they said is that he has two identities, and this is how all this started, with two nationalities. Well, to be honest, Pablo was born in Russia. His mother is a Spaniard. When his parents divorced, his mother came back to Spain with him, and he was registered in the civil register as a Spanish citizen who was born in Russia, and in the register, in the civil register, are both names, the Russian name and the Spanish name. And it's so simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Pablo is also Pavel.
Yeah.
And there is no different identity. It's only a different language and a different name for the same person. Pablo and Pavel, Paul and Pavel. I have three daughters, and they have two nationalities each. I hope in the future they will not be in this situation that Pablo is now.
Yeah. This is once again. You see, I couldn't believe that this happened. I was stupefied by this.
But as soon as we present those documents to the Polish authorities, they start changing the story, because every time that we move forward, they change the scenario. They said Pablo was getting money from the Russians. We present all the bank's account. There was no single penny coming from the Russian. There was a help from his father, for a period of time of 300 euros per month.
What's so crazy about that?
Well, I have more expensive daughters. Excuse me, but 300 euros nowadays from a father to help a son who is working in a so unstable work, like to be a freelance journalist, I don't see anything wrong.
Yeah, but for them, this is espionage. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
They have been moving the story step by step. As soon as we demonstrate that something is false, they change the story.
Yeah,
and at the end, this makes the defense impossible.
Yeah. Also, he's stuck in a country where I'm presuming he doesn't speak Polish, right? So it makes things even harder for him.
Well, he speaks now a bit of Polish, not perfect, but good. He speaks Russian. He speaks Spanish. He speaks English. Well, he's a freelance journalist that has been moving all around the world, and all his work is on the internet. People can see it.
Right. But what did they say after you told them that you showed them the bank accounts? How did they change the story then?
Well, they are coming with new issues, and at the end of the day, every time that they come with a new issue, as we don't know the whole file, we don't know when this new issue starts, and of course we cannot disclose information from the file. But I can tell you that this is like trying to chase a cat.
Yeah, right.
It's always moving in one direction or the other.
This is why they should give you all the facts from the beginning, so you can deal with everything at once, and then clear
it. As in
any
democratic country, the police and the prosecutor said, "Here is your file. This is what we think that you have done, and here are our evidence. What do you have to say?"
Right.
That will be a normal case, and we as a lawyer, we work with such cases. What's very difficult is to work and the assumption that whatever we said will be changed for something different.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that you think the Spanish government kind of, outsourced or externalized arresting Pablo to the Polish government. I wanted to ask you because I think you're familiar with David Mendoza's case. He's a good friend, and he's actually the one who told me about Pablo González.
I know him.
Yeah, he sued Spain, the Spanish government rather, in the Supreme Court, and one of the rulings in his favor was that the Spanish government had not done enough. The Spanish executive had not done enough on his behalf. I'm wondering, can you use that ruling to push the Spanish executive to help Pablo?
Well, the issue is that we have put it forward, and we are always trying to make the people understanding that the Spanish government is not only not doing enough, but I insist in something very important. Espionage is not a crime that is committed locally. If you're a spy, you're always committing the crime, which means in that case, Pablo has committed in every places. If you consider him a spy, he could have committed in all the places. But he was in Spain 48 hours before he was arrested. Why they haven't arrested him here? Then he could have had a fair trial. He could not be in isolation. We will not know all the evidence, and we could challenge the charges in a proper way. They externalize the situation. It's like Guantanamo. What you couldn't do in the US, you built a place in Guantanamo outside the rule of law. Well, right. What you cannot do in Spain, you do it in a special Guantanamo, which is Poland at this moment.
Wow. I mean, the way that you put it, it's really, really compelling, and it makes a lot of sense. Basically they kind of manufacture another jurisdiction or hand it over to another jurisdiction.
Well, they have searched for a jurisdiction of convenience. Where can we break this guy through?
Yeah.
Where can we get him to accept even what he has not done? Well, he's part of the time in Poland. Let's do it there.
And this happened. He was arrested 5 days after the war in Ukraine started. I find it a bit difficult to understand that because he's Russian, maybe this has something to do with that. And what could he have done in 5 days? I mean, like you said, 2 days before he was in Spain. So if he's,
it's not only that. In January, he was cross-examined in Ukraine with Spanish officials in the room, and at the same time, the Spanish Secret Service was talking with his wife and his mother. So Spain was on top of Pablo before he was arrested in Poland. I still not knowing why they haven't arrested him in Spain. But on the other hand, why they don't check all his work? He has criticized Russia so many times in his work that it sounds a very strange sort of spy.
Yeah, it's it's very, very bizarre. So the fact that basically they went to his wife and his mother. I mean, isn't this another form of harassment against his family?
Well, it is. Of course, it is. And what they are pretending is also a way of criminalizing a work like the journalists. It's like it's the same when they try to criminalize the work of lawyers because we defend this or that other person. Well, in this case, when he was doing his job, sometimes, of course, the Polish authorities didn't like his work, but maybe also not the Russian and maybe also not the Spaniards. What is the problem with that? That's journalism.
Yeah. This is the thing, because I've covered the Assange case a lot, but Pablo's case, Pablo González case, this is something that I only just recently found out about. So I'm trying to get more and more people to talk about it. And what do you think would help him the most right now? Is there a movement to get him freed? What can people participate in?
There is an association, organization created by his wife and some friends called Free Pablo, which is very active. And I think the best way to help Pablo is to put the cards on the table, is to talk about his case. The mainstream has remained silent.
Yeah,
And
that's
the
true.
mainstream are publishing full pages about an American journalist arrested in Russia, something that Pablo regret and myself also regret.
Hmm.
But it cannot be that some journalists are good inmates and some are bad inmates.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
No, that's very well put. It's very well put. May I ask, is there an address where people can write letters to him, or he's receiving no mail, as I understood, right?
He's receiving letters from his family at a given time. Sometimes take 1.5 months, 2 months, because they are all intervened. So the Polish authorities all read the letters. I think that won't help him, the letters, especially because everybody will read it, and also most probably they will never arrive to him. But I think people should follow the account of Free Pablo and try to in Twitter, and try to give a voice to somebody who has no voice for the last year and a half.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, I'm shocked at this whole thing, and the fact he's been so long with no legal representation, without any help. It's really really abysmal. But in any case, I appreciate you coming on the program to talk about Pablo González, and I'm very grateful to you and your work. As I mentioned in the introduction, you've done some great stuff even before. And I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Boye.
Thank you very much for the interest, and I hope this program will be seen by a lot of people.
Yes, I hope so too. Thanks again for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was Gonzalo Boye. As I mentioned in the introduction, he's a lawyer based in Spain, and perhaps I mentioned in the introduction that he's tried to extradite George Bush. So this is the junior, right? And 5 other Bush officials. One of them was, I think, his speechwriter, David Frum. And basically it's because back then they had committed, obviously, a lot of war crimes in Iraq, but it was specifically against Spanish journalists and citizens. And this is something that was kept hidden for a long time, and something that he said that Mr. Boye just mentioned is that, he, and I didn't say anything. So, he said it himself. I was going to go there, but he said it himself before I made any mention. What did he say? He said that Spain, the Spanish government, he gets the impression, and he's been doing this for a long time. He understands the law and knows the Spanish government. He said that they kind of got Poland, or they were trying to externalize the arrest of Pablo González. Okay. So this is unfortunately something that you see with Spain. It's a very, very a country that's controlled very much by the United States, for starters, and then you have the executive kind of just behaving like you wouldn't believe. It's very sad, right? It's very sad to see the Spanish executive behave like this. Whether it's Mendoza's case or Pablo González's case, or even in Boye's case, they can be very unfair, the European governments. But in any case, I'm going to put up the page that he just mentioned now. So give me a moment. This is the here. This is the page we looked at the other time when I was streaming. So this is the account is Free Pablo González. The handle, as you can see, is Free Pablo, and then GONZ, Pablo Gonz. Okay, so definitely go follow them and try and spread the word about this guy, because I mean, can you imagine? I only found out a few weeks ago about his case, and it's been a year plus. So February, he was arrested 5 days after the war in Ukraine started. So that's February. Well, let's say what was it? March 1st, right? So, and now we're in June. So that's a year plus some change, and I only just found out about him. Can you imagine? This guy, you know, he's just a freelance journalist, and they don't like his work. Yeah, big deal. You're not. He's supposed to make you uncomfortable. That's the point of a journalist. That's the point. There he is. I'll put up his picture on so you guys can see. But I did a full video on him, you know, last week. So go watch that video. But I'm glad his lawyer came on to talk about this, because, as I said, Mr. Boye is a very accomplished legal rep. So he's a great lawyer. Let's continue and talk about the rest of the topics, because there's a lot that's happening right now in Ukraine, especially with this counteroffensive, right? So give me a second to set up the window here. There we go. I've been trying to pull up some photos of Russian trench positions to show you, but they keep scribbling all over them and making it. And I just wanted satellite images. That's all, nothing more. Okay. But in any case, I'll lay it out for you, and we'll go through this together. Okay. Give me a sec. Okay, so the long-awaited Ukrainian counteroffensive is finally here, or at least they say so. But Zelensky confirmed that, you know, they've started sending the tanks in to kick the Russians out and so on. And I kind of wanted to go through what's happening, because you need to understand that the Russians, they've been building hundreds of kilometers, you know, of positions, of trenches, of you know, tank traps. And usually what they'll do, this is, I'm generalizing here, but what they'll do is they'll have these tank traps. It's basically like a trench, but so wide that it, you know, not only could you fit a couple of human beings in there, but an entire tank would just fall in, right? This tank trap, it's so wide that any tank that actually, you know, drives there is going to fall in. You know, many tanks that can cross tiny gaps, you know, but maybe a few meters wide, but they can't go this wide. So the Russians, they start with building these massive lines for the tanks to fall inside, okay? And then after that, what you'll have are these basically they call them dragon's teeth. It's a bunch of white concrete slabs that block any tank from moving through. So even if hypothetically that, you know, whatever tank you have would get past the first line of defense, they would still have to negotiate these concrete slabs of obstacles in their face, right? So you can see some of them on the screen here. I've tried to get some decent pictures, but as I mentioned, yeah, there we go. So this is what the concrete dragon's teeth look like. Okay, so this is obviously a bit simpler, but they'll have them positioned in multiple rows so you can get through. Okay, that's the entire point. Then the third line of defense, you can see in these satellite photos, these zigzags down here. You see those? these are trenches for human beings this time, okay, not for tanks to fall in, but these are the just your regular trenches, you know, and the third line of defense. Okay, so you need to understand all of this, because the Russians have been from you know, the better part of a year just building a massive line, and which of course, you know, includes all the areas here. So everything behind in red, okay? You can see this line going around like that. Now, what have the Ukrainians been able to capture? I mean, not much, very, very little. They've taken some villages, but I'm being very, very generous here, because actually they've sent in their tanks and they've been completely devoured. You know, that doesn't mean the Russians haven't taken losses, because that you can bet they're taking losses too. But these tanks have been hyped up, right? They've been saying, oh, we're going to send them the Challenger 2s, which are the British tanks with depleted uranium, right? And the Leopard, which are the German tanks, and they also gave them some even older ones. And then the you know, they've got some Bradleys, which are not you know, the highly coveted American M1 Abrams, but M1A2 Abrams, but you know, they'll get there someday. You know, you remember when we were talking about the Americans sending in Abrams? What they did is basically they tricked the Germans and British into sending their own tanks, and then, you know, gave the impression that you would have M1 Abrams coming as well with the Challengers, but it was just a trick, right? Like a typical, you know, Uncle Sam lawyer type. We'll send them, but, you know, at some point, not right now. They just forgot to mention that. In any case, here I'll show you a couple of videos, okay? So these are purported to be, or this is rather purported to be a column of Ukrainian tanks getting ready to go in. Okay, there's a lot of videos here, right? These are just Russian drones, basically. You can see them filming themselves going in for the nosedive. I mean, you can't see anything on this video. You can't see anything on this, but it's basically thermal vision at night. And the you see those things glowing in the middle? That's a column of armored vehicles, right? There we go. Now that's the projectile, and yeah, it's hitting in the armor. Okay, so these are being fired from helicopters, from Russian helicopters. Basically, by the way, what happens is the Ukrainians will hit some Russian vehicle and then publish the video through the Ministry of Defense, and the Russians will do the same thing every day, you know. So here, this is a video published by Ukraine where they're hitting a Russian tank. Well, that one's already hit. You know, what you're seeing is, yeah, okay, there you go. The ammunition, yeah. So they'll hit the tank, and sometimes the rounds, the shells, the fuel that's being carried in the tank will also catch fire and then explode, and the turret will pop off. The turret is the gun that sits on top, which moves. So, you know, when that happens, you'll know it, and effectively the ammunition's blown up there. But here's another one. So what the Russians are saying is that the Ukrainians are sending in these like suicidal columns of tanks that are really just, they're trying to test the Russian defenses and break through so that others can follow. But, you know, for the poor guys that are the poor guys that are driving the tanks in the front, that are driving that initial column, well, you know, it's not nice. Here they're publishing more of these videos. You see that in the middle? So what you're watching, these are the gun sites. Okay. There you have 2 APCs that are gone, that have exploded. APC is an armored personnel carrier, so it's some of them have turrets, meaning guns, and basically you'll have a cannon on top and some machine guns, maybe one in the front and on the sides. Not all of them, but you'll have several people, like, you know, more than 3 or 4 that drive a tank. 10 men inside of an APC. So when you hit an APC, you know, it will incur far more casualties. And like I said, I mean, this whole thing's so sad and could have been avoided, but here's Biden. Sorry, Blinken. Christ, I'm starting to speak like Biden. But here's Blinken saying that the Russians are going to lose, and because of this counteroffensive.
Ukraine's success in the counteroffensive would do 2 things. It would strengthen its position at any negotiating table that emerges, and it may have the effect as well of actually causing Putin to finally focus on negotiating an end to the war that he started. And in that sense, it can actually bring peace closer, not put it further away. Ukraine's success in the...
You know, this guy is really funny because he says things that have no basis in reality. You know, there is a table, a negotiating table that Ukraine can come to at any time, but because Boris Johnson, you know, the former prime minister, went to Zelensky and told him, pull out, don't engage in any peace talks with the Russians. We will back you, we will help you, etc., etc. That's almost a year ago. Almost, not quite, but almost a year ago. What good has that done Ukraine, or Russia for that matter, or the rest of the world? You know, it's only been escalation after escalation. So Blinken, unfortunately, has, you know, some form of demented thinking that goes back many administrations. You know, it's kind of like the Nixon, the Dick Nixon and Henry Kissinger mantra. You know, bomb them to the negotiating table. This is when you have you've reached peak diplomatic status, when your mind is so in tune with peace and diplomacy that you bomb someone into negotiating with you. So you had missions like Linebacker 1 and Linebacker 2 in Vietnam, where, you know, well, it wasn't really Vietnam only, was it? It's Cambodia and Laos too. But anyway, the idea in those missions was you send B-52. The B-52 is the and still is the main bomber, right, that the Americans have. In World War II, they had B-17, and then that was, you know, scrapped and well, it became outdated. And they had the B-52, and it's so good they've kept it ever since. And they give them maintenance and so on. But back then, you know, a B-52 is carrying traditional ordnance, so traditional bombs, and they can also carry nuclear bombs. But even without a nuclear bomb, let's say it's just a conventional you know, a bomb and ordnance that they drop from the aircraft. It's non-nuclear, okay? You need to understand that these are carpet bombers. These planes, it's like they spit bombs, right? They don't just drop one object. They carpet bomb, hence the term carpet bomb the place. Now, they would send one after the other after the other. They're literally in a line, these planes. So they flattened the place. So this thinking that Blinken has, it's, you know, obviously no one is, I'm not comparing these, you know, these Ukrainian counteroffensive or counteroffensives to Linebacker. It's a completely different beast. But the thinking behind Blinken's sentence is kind of the same. It's, you know, I'm not going to try to reason with someone. I'm just going to bomb them so much that they'll just want to talk to me. Okay, I mean, maybe that works sometimes, but you're supposed to be a diplomat, and that's not really right, because he's a secretary of state or foreign secretary. So you would expect something a little better and refined, but rather. But unfortunately, it's rather lacking. So here's this is just a random clip of Oliver Stone that I found. He seems to be thinking that the Russians are winning. I'll just play it for you.
Into a war situation in this Ukraine, you have so much propaganda especially from the Western side. It's so one-sided that everything becomes an anti-Russian issue. Obviously, they're the stronger country. They're winning the war. They're actually kicking ass, but we don't know that in the West. We have no realization of what's really going on because there's been no military honesty. It's a completely corrupt process in the United States. You have to run everything through the White House because the White House is fighting the war, and they're telling you the Russians are evil and brutal, all this stuff, but it's not fair because we're not getting the truth, and the American people are blind. They're led by like sheep to a conclusion. Once you get into a
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to put it, certainly. That's certainly one way to put it. Here are some of these videos that they're posting, the Ukrainians. It's a flag raise, so they'll take a village or something, and then they'll get all the soldiers who are knackered to just go put up a flag so they can post it through, on the BBC or Sky News or whatever. Yeah, I mean, let me end this video just by saying that this Ukrainian counteroffensive doesn't seem to be, what it's all cracked up to be. I mean, they sent a bunch of drones to attack the Kremlin, and they had this Belgorod incursion. And yes, that might seem funny that you are provoking a nuclear power, but in terms of the front line, it's not moving. And it hasn't moved for many months, I mean, this is not doing it, It's not doing it. So these green circles, or shall we say black and green circles, that's where you have intense fighting, okay? But you can see that it's mostly I mean, they're saying here that the biggest one is Kherson. I mean, the whole counteroffensive mostly concentrated in Kherson. In any case, but just to show it to you on a map, right? You have this outside Bakhmut over here, but then down when we look south towards Kherson, that's where you have most of the fighting, and the claimed Ukrainian counteroffensives in blue, it's nothing. It's like it's barely a few villages, right? So if they've spent months giving all of these tanks and all this tank training to the Ukrainians just for this, I mean, I'd be disappointed. I'd be disappointed if I were Zelensky. I mean, I think I'd be fuming, honestly, if this is it. But again, they will continue tomorrow and the days after, so it's not over. Everything could change tomorrow morning. But as of now, I'm talking to you on June 13th, right? This is towards 10 p.m. This is where it's at. They've taken almost nothing back. And they kept saying it's a spring counteroffensive. I mean, it's a little late for that, but is this it? It's just a bunch of tank columns, and keep in mind these are, the Russians are posting videos of them finding these tanks still on, right? I think it was a Bradley in that video where you had a Russian soldiers like filming how they just taken out a Ukrainian tank, and the engine in the tank was still running. I don't know if it was a Bradley or something else. It doesn't matter. The point was that he's trying to indicate how swiftly and quickly they're dealing with the counteroffensive. Now, obviously, that's just one example. It's anecdotal, but there's so many videos I couldn't even show them all because it's and of course you have to take them with a pinch of salt. But there's so many, and for what? You have to keep in mind, like over the past days, you're gonna have you're seeing estimates of 8,000 Ukrainian killed, 8,000 Ukrainian soldiers. You could say the Russians have it the same or roughly the same. Just think of these figures. You have thousands of people dying for a few stretches. I mean, it's abysmal. It's truly abysmal. So, right now what the West is saying about Russia is that they've run out of their tanks, that they're having to go and get some from their old Soviet stock. So, the Russians, they have like around 4,000 or 5,000 tanks in storage, and not all of them, but a good chunk are from what you would call the Soviet era or Cold War. And that doesn't mean they're bad. I don't know why they keep saying this, like it means they're bad. And Soviet era could mean anything, frankly. What are we talking about? A T-34, a T-70, which it's a T-72. I mean, the Soviet era could mean anything, right? But in any case, they're saying that the Russians are running out of tanks because Ukraine is blasting them away, that they're going and trying to get some out of the old stock. It's the same thing that they were saying when the drone war kind of escalated. When I say that, I mean warfare inside of Ukraine, not the drone war in Afghanistan, right? or led by the Americans. They were saying back then that Russia can't build drones. They have no more drones, and now they're having to resort to asking Iran. And then it turned out everything Iran was sending was good. So, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna see you through this whole BBC clip, but just take a listen to how it's going. Right, according to them.
Let's turn our attention to Ukraine. The country has remained tight-lipped about the much-anticipated spring counter-offensive, but today they're claiming some victories. My colleague Yalda Hakim is in Kyiv. Yalda.
Mariam, thank you. And as you say, the Ukrainian side is claiming some victories, although it's still early days. The President Zelensky, told a press conference that I was at a few days ago that the counteroffensive has begun, and we have started to see some developments, although it's still so difficult to get information from the battlefield. But let's just tell you what we know so far. So I'm just going to show you some footage here, which was released earlier today by Ukraine's 35 separate Marine Infantry Brigade. It's described as showing Ukrainian forces recapturing the village of Storozheve. Now, Storozheve is in the Donetsk region in the country's southeast. It's been under Russian occupation for much of the war. Now, it's not far from the settlements of Blahodatne, and you'll remember we've been reporting about Blahodatne just yesterday when they claimed that they had retaken that area, and Neskuchne, as well as Makarivka. These were the first Ukraine said it liberated on Sunday, and we have been keeping our audiences up to date on those in the last 24 hours. Now, footage on social media, which the BBC has not yet verified, shows troops hoisting the Ukrainian flag in the settlements. Kyiv's Deputy Defense Minister said nearby Makarivka was also taken. So some developments there, although, as I said, it's difficult to verify a lot of this. We are getting the information from social media, and our BBC Verify team is working away to try and verify the footage.
Our BBC Verify team. Why are you trying to plug this thing, BBC Verify team? Okay, so the BBC Verify team are trying to verify the footage. What the hell are the rest of you doing? You're journalists, I thought. Aren't you supposed to verify it anyway? I mean, I'm telling you from the beginning, half of this stuff is put out through the defense ministries, right? What does that mean? It's curated. So the Russians are not going to put out a video of their tanks being destroyed, and neither are the Ukrainians, right? And vice versa. So I'm telling you from the beginning, this stuff is curated. Not all of it, but a good chunk of it. Okay? especially the stuff from helicopters and drones. Everything that's in the air, because that's being recorded, and it's not like you have some guy who just, who's on the ground whipping out his phone or whatever. But they're so cringy. They're so cringy at BBC. I'm just complaining about their BBC Verify stuff. I haven't even begun. Let's continue. I promise I won't torture you for too much longer.
Footage that we're getting from the front lines. What we do know is that the pace of things, while we are hearing about the liberation of these villages, according to the Ukrainian forces, it's still early days, and the Russian side is reporting that there are huge casualties on the Ukrainian side. The Ukrainian side is saying the same thing. So we are being cautious about what we're reporting. But joining me now is...
oh my God, she almost became a journalist for like 20 seconds. She started using critical thinking. Oh yes, both sides are going to exaggerate. Yes. It's a war. We don't know. She almost became one. Not quite, but In any case, I think that these satellite images are fascinating. You can see multiple rows. Multiple lines of defense that the Russians have dug in. Now, it's not the prettiest architecture. It's plain ugly. But you haven't seen anything like this for a long time. And you have to keep in mind, they don't have them every single, it's not the Atlantic Wall or something. It's they've basically done them on the main road. So if there's a main road coming down here, they'll cut that off with the lines of defense I mentioned earlier, right? So they'll because you physically, logistically, you can't build something to encircle every single village and town and city. It would be crazy. Right? It would be crazy. But I'm curious to see how these Western tanks that they've been flogging for so long now. And trying to convince you it's the best thing in the world, how they're going to deal with this, because everything that the Russians have built is there. You can't just remove it or imagine that it, pretend it doesn't exist. It's there. These defensive lines. Here, even the BBC were talking about this. Look, so they were showing Crimea. Okay, this is 2 months ago in 2023. It's the same thing I told you, but it's on the beach. I'm not quite sure what they were expecting. Like, are they expecting an invasion through the Black Sea or something? But it's not stupid to do it just to be safe. And you can see that whole trench line going down like this, right? And it's the same thing that we looked at all around Kherson and Donbass and so on. So in any case, I'll keep you guys up to date every day or almost every day, at least on Twitter, definitely. But whenever we live stream, I'll bring you up to speed on what's happening in Ukraine. But that's basically it right now. Let me look at what else I have here, because I've uncovered something so horrendous. It's so bad that you're not going to believe it. How do I even... I've uncovered something so horrendous. It's so bad that you're going to think I made it up. But this is a real video. Do you see what it says there? Lockheed Martin. What the hell? I mean, I don't even know where to begin. First of all, the fact that they came on foot and brought a truck. I mean, you guys build weapons. Couldn't you show us something more fancy? You know, bring a jet with you, bring a tank. I mean, they don't build too many tanks, but come on. You could have at least marketed something, you know, more fancy than this. But this is so bad because it shows you how you know, you have this this thing called pinkwashing. So essentially, you have companies, and in this case, a weapons manufacturer, kind of, you know, sinking their teeth into a Pride Month, which is supposed to celebrate, you know, LGBTQ plus or whatever. You know, it's basically it started out to celebrate gay people, and now you have a weapons company hijacking something that is meant to celebrate gay people, so they can kind of like, you know, pretend like their business isn't about murdering human beings and profiting off of wars. Wow. Even the CIA, look, even the CIA put out some stupid picture. I mean, this is so ugly. It looks like someone made it with paint, right? It's not even Photoshop. And I like how they tried to find how to stick CIA in the word pride. But, you know, they say Pride Month is an occasion for all of us at the agency to pay tribute to the rich history, community, and mission contributions of our LGBTQ plus officers. Wow. Okay. You know, I distinctly recall, and I showed this to you, the CIA and FBI, if you want to go look at theirs too. If you go to their website, they'll have these old documents that they've declassified. And the CIA, they had like a handbook, a manual on how you could harass someone who's gay, right? So if you're a CIA agent, they would teach you how to find out if someone's gay and then use that against them as blackmail, right? Like, oh, I'm going to tell your family unless you give me whatever information, or I'm going to out you. I'm going to tell people that you're gay if you don't give me this information. And now the CIA, you know, after weaponizing the fact that someone's gay, right? Against gay people, they're pretending that they celebrate being gay. Wow. I mean, you got to be a real idiot to believe this. What is this, man? It's not even like a half-assed effort. This is worse than last year. Last year, I think they changed their profile picture. This is not even that. What is this? Last year, the NSA, I think, also changed their profile picture. I did a video on it, right? We went through it together. But this is, you know, this Lockheed Martin, this one takes the cake. There's no doubt about it. This is the best one. This is the best attempt yet. It's so like, you know, discreetly placed there, right? It's part of the parade, so you wouldn't know. It's just, you know, it's just part of the parade. It's in there. Well, you know, well done. But unfortunately, we can see it, right? We're not idiots. We know what you do. Lockheed Martin. Here's a meme that I've shared with you guys many times, and it shows you the difference between Republicans on the top and Democrats below. As you can see, there's not much difference, right? Because they're both dropping bombs. And by the way, that's a B-52, right? Which we were talking about before. Carpet bombing. I don't know. Maybe it's Vietnam. Maybe it's Cambodia. Maybe it's Iraq. Who knows? But the point here is that the difference is non-existent. They just, you know, the Democrats now use identity politics. So basically, they'll here you can see it says Black Lives Matter in the front. So they'll pretend to care about black people or about women. Here, that's Hillary's logo. Yes, she can, or rather slogan. And then here in the back, you see the pride flag, right? So that's what Democrats do. They tokenize women, people of color, gay people, and then pretend to care about these groups while actually just being the same as Republicans in every way, right? You see the Black Lives Matter thing. Do you guys know when Black Lives Matter started? It actually started when Obama was president, right? So that and there are many criticisms about Obama, right? So we can talk about the drone war. We can talk about, killing people in Syria. He started that whole thing because 2011 when he was president, that's when they started bombing Libya and trying to get rid of Assad in Syria. So, you know, the fact that he's black, did that help black people? No, nothing changed. No reforms. The fact that Hillary Clinton, you know, she was running for president, she was the candidate, the nominee for the DNC. Did she promise anything, you know, good for minorities? No. She, by the way, with the pride flag, I distinctly remember she was against gay marriage, just as an example. And then she changed her position because she wanted to get elected. And now, in order to, you know, to become the nominee, you have to adapt. If you're someone like you know, what I call a swamp creature, somebody who's a career politician in DC, you got to adapt, right? And keep with the times. So that's what she was doing. She was pretending now, oh, I care about all these people, and she doesn't really give a crap. So, you know, this thing here is like the meme that I just showed you coming to life. That's really what it is. And, you know, I mean, I plugged this t-shirt all year, but if the CIA and Nike and Lockheed Martin and all these people can start plugging their crap, you bet your ass I'm gonna plug mine. This is when Joe Biden got elected. This is why I came up with this meme, and I put it on a t-shirt. This is why I came up with this Uncle Joe's Rainbow Coalition death cult. And I wrote in the bottom, if the sanctions don't kill you, the drones will. It is funny. I'm sorry. I like my own jokes here. I put it on a t-shirt, and I think this is I think it's the best-selling thing we have on the store, right? So I mean, you can put on a sweater or a t-shirt or whatever, or even a mug. I got mine, but I haven't worn it in quite a while. So yeah, this is exactly what Democrats are right now. They're just like Republicans. They are, you know, neocons and neoliberals. They're one and the same. But you know, it's just that Democrats, they pretend to care about minorities, and they tokenize their you know, their movements. That's really it. You know, it doesn't cost anything for them to say, oh, I support gay marriage, I support you know, Pride Month, or I support black people. It doesn't cost them anything to say that. But when it comes to getting, you know, a certain piece of legislation through, let's say police reform, whatever it is, right? Something that's actually going to help those movements, they're not going to do it. And we've, you know, I've said this a million times. There's no point even repeating it, but we have to repeat it, especially when you know, this is something that they try to hijack. Look, here's the NYPD. They have Happy Pride Month. I mean, do I even need to tell you? do I even need to tell you that the CIA, you know, harassing gay people is something that you're going to see also from many police departments, and they did see, right? They did see the people living in New York 40 years ago, 30 years ago. Go ask them. Don't, you know, go ask them if the NYPD treated them nice for being gay, right? Because it's on. I mean, it's on the car, right? On the squad car. So we might as well ask. You know, there's something else that I often bring up. Alan Turing, who's a mathematician, you know, cryptographer, and he basically, you know, he cracked the Enigma machine, which was the Nazi code machine for the Allies. Okay, so he's an English mathematician, and he did some of the most important work in World War II. Okay, easily. So that's why the other day I was saying on the show, if you're going to credit one person, like if you had to pick who helped win World War II for the Allies, at the top of the list, you probably put Alan Turing. And he happened to be gay. So even after helping the Allies win World War II, the police harassed him for being gay, and they chemically castrated him. Right? So they told him, you can go to prison, or you can take these pills that will basically make you infertile, or, you know, I mean, I mean that's pretty sick. to do that to any human being. But this guy's supposed to be like a decorated war hero, and he helped invent the computer, the modern computer, right? And he helps win World War II, and that's what the British government decided to. That's how he was rewarded. And a few decades later, I forgot who was prime minister, but they basically apologized to his family for having done that. Well, you know, I mean, it doesn't change the history. But in any case, this is what you call pinkwashing, all of this. When you have companies, so you have corporate America, and it's not just America, it's just because these things, you know, they're worldwide, but corporations and governments trying to use it as a method to make you accept the behavior of the CIA or the NYPD's behavior, right? Or GCHQ's behavior or the NSA's behavior, or Lockheed Martin, right? This is a company that kills, and now they're pretending to be all about love. No, you guys murder people. Like, I'm not really sure what you're even doing here, but next year, hopefully Boeing will bring a plane to the Pride Parade in TC. Okay, you know, maybe the jets can do the Pride colors from their exhausts, right? Yeah, they're funny. They're really funny. Okay, let me show you something else here. This is really something. Okay. So, let's talk about Israel, and let's talk about how the Israeli lobby kind of smear people and you know, defame them and destroy their public image and so on. And also how they apply pressure on others, because this story that I'm about to tell you is it's multifaceted and very important. So RFK Jr., right? Robert Kennedy Jr., who is John F. Kennedy's niece, right? He's running for president in the Democratic Party. And there's this speech he gave about NATO, which I'll play in a second, and it's very good. But you know, there's something afterwards that happened about Israel, which we'll also discuss. Let's just start with the speech because it went viral.
We told the Russians. We told the Russians. We told the Russians. We told the Russians.
Well, I don't know why the hell it's not loading. What did you tell the Russians, man?
We told the Russians in 1991 and 1992 repeatedly and in writing, although not in a signed treaty, that if they removed the 400 troops from Germany and allowed Germany to reunite under NATO, that we would not move NATO 1 inch to the east. We've since then moved it 1,000 miles to the east and 14 countries. Not only that, but we have put Aegis missile systems which can launch nuclear missiles in Romania and Poland, right on the Russian border. The Russians, Bill Burns, who was the U.S. ambassador to Russia at that time and is now the head of the CIA, sent a famous memo in which he said, if you moved NATO into the Ukraine, it is a red line that cannot be crossed. And we need to put ourselves in the Russians' shoes and actually understand. My uncle always said, you have to put yourself in your adversary's shoes.
I mean, once again, credit where credit is due. He nailed it. Everything he said here is correct, and I think it's all the more important. Why does he bring up his uncle? Because you have to remember this Cuban Missile Crisis. It's his uncle, right? JFK, who is in the middle of it, right? So the Cuban Missile Crisis, I often refer to as an example of where, you know, how would the U.S. react if you know, Russia was moving weapons or forming some kind of military alliance next door? And we have a historical precedent. In any case, this is a fantastic speech. You know, he nailed it every point, and I'm, you know, he took the words right out of my mouth. Every single thing he said, I've told you guys a million times. Now afterwards, a few days later, I see him, RFK, right? RFK Jr. He gets into trouble because he posted something on Twitter. He, you know, he said that He likes Roger Waters, who's from Pink Floyd, and well, that wasn't allowed because right now everyone is going after Roger Waters for having the same opinions about what's happening in Ukraine and for criticizing Israel. Okay, so here, this rabbi, he posts a long thread, and he's saying, Robert Kennedy Jr. came to my house for dinner, and we discussed Roger Waters, and I explained to him, right. So the rabbi here is saying, Bobby told me he had no idea that Waters was such a vicious anti-Semite. And when he studied the issue and the facts, he immediately deleted the tweet. I believe Bobby, and I thanked him for his repudiation of Waters. How tragic it is for Waters to have his legacy as an anti-Semite now overtake his legacy as an accomplished artist. Okay? I mean, to me, when I'm reading this and I'm looking at this photograph, it looks like something the mafia would post. Like, I explained to Bobby that we don't like Mr. Waters and how anti-Semitic Mr. Waters is, right, Bobby? What is this thing, man? It's like a hostage, he's been taken hostage or something. Now, this was bad enough, okay? This was bad enough. So basically, they got him to delete the tweet. Now, even more interesting, right? Robert Kennedy Jr. went on System Update, which is Glenn Greenwald's show, and he asked him about this, right? He asked him about Israel. He asked him why he deleted this tweet where he praised Roger Waters. And let's just watch the clips a little bit, okay?
Context. Everything has a historical context in Israel. And if you look at why we don't have a two-state solution in Israel, which everybody now says they want, but both in 1947 and 1948, and then again in 2001, it was the Palestinian leadership that walked away from a two-state solution and pledged itself to the destruction of the Jewish people. Oh, and that, that's a very, very clear history. And I think at a time when they had a very, very generous solution on the table.
I want to interrupt, well, not interrupt, but comment so badly. But let me just, here's the rest of the clip.
We need to have the same standard for judging Israel as we judge other Arab countries. We should, and Israel is going into the West Bank and killing children. Is never doing that deliberately. Never.
What?
And nobody has ever said it is.
Well, a lot of people have said it. A lot of people have said it is. But let me just ask you, because I just want to focus
in all of those other countries, it is the deliberate policy of those countries to attack and target civilians and to kill them.
Okay, so
wow. He said Israel is not going into the West Bank and killing Palestinian children. They literally just did that. So I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. You have this boy, a 2.5-year-old boy, 2-year-old boy, was shot dead by Israel just 2 days ago, right? Just a few days ago. So this is on excuse me, it's 6th of June. So a little over a week. It doesn't matter. This is in the West Bank, and Israel doing exactly what RFK Jr. says Israel doesn't do. That's the boy who was killed, right? Mohammed Tamimi. So they were using live ammunition, the Israelis, and they said, "Oh, our lives were in danger." Blah blah blah. It's a complete lie, I mean, even if you accept everything that RFK Jr. said, like you love Israel and you think that the Israeli Defense Forces is the most moral army in the world. By their own standards, by the Israelis' own so-called standards, they can't justify this because they are not under threat, and they're running around just like randomly firing and then killing a 2-year-old boy. How do you justify that? You even by their own standards. But the problem is that the Israelis, this is their standard. They do this all the time. If they don't do it today, they'll do it, next year with when they go and bomb Gaza. They're always killing children and women and men, everyone. They're killing Palestinians on a daily basis. On a daily basis, the fact that they're being killed is not even the only issue. Let's say the Israelis are killing 0 Palestinians a day, right? They're not killing any Palestinians. What does that mean? That it's okay to occupy Palestine? Every moment they're whining and screaming about Ukraine and Russia occupying Ukraine and Russia annexing Ukraine. Okay, so what about Israel? This is an issue that is much, much, much older than Russia, Ukraine. Why don't we talk about that? Why isn't this on the news? Why don't the BBC and Sky News talk about this boy who's been killed? Why doesn't RFK Jr. talk about this boy, Mohammed Tamimi, who was shot dead, a 2-year-old boy? Well, what does he have to do with this? Did he walk away from the 1947 reasonable solution that was on the table, according to him? What does this mean? This is what is so. I'm glad that Glenn interrupted him, or tried to, because he wouldn't let him, because people are criticizing Israel. Even these NGOs, which usually do nothing, have started to pivot and admit, okay, Israel is apartheid. It's more than apartheid, but even they are saying it. Even Amnesty International and all of this, right? So the truth is starting to come out in public, and the point here is that you see the Democrats, which I was telling you about a moment ago, how they're hijacking, Pride Month and so on. When it comes to Israel, once again, they are no different from the Republican candidates, right? And I have always said this to you, if you want to know what a candidate is about, whether they're running for president or they're running for, in local and state elections, just ask them what their foreign policy is and just ask them if they support Israel. That's all you need to know, man. Because you can tell, if they have this imperialist thinking or from that, okay? Because Israel is the Anglo-Saxons' way of splitting up the Middle East, of creating a sphere of influence in the Middle East and of occupation in the Middle East, right? That's what purpose Israel serves. Why do you think the United States, out of all the countries on earth, decides to give Israel now it's Ukraine that's taken more, but on a yearly basis? Why out of all these places on earth does the United States pour so much money into Israel? Why did the United Kingdom help create Israel, promising a so-called Jewish state and then handing over the Palestinian mandate to the Israelis? Why did the United Kingdom and the United States do this? They did this because they wanted to fracture the Arab world, and they wanted to make sure that you were not going to have an Arab state or an Arab unified state in any size or any capacity. Do you understand? It's very, very important to grasp this. So nothing has changed since then. And, the fact that he is RFK Jr., immediately he throws Roger Waters under the bus. And then he takes this mafia style photo here that I showed you with the rabbi, right? God, this is so cringy. It's so cringy, right? And the fact that he didn't even write this, RFK Jr. didn't even write this. It came from the guy on the left, right? He's saying, I explained to Bobby that we don't like Roger Waters because he's a vicious anti-Semite, right, Bobby? and then he's defending Israel now, and he's saying, oh, Israel is, the Arabs are committed to the destruction of the Jewish people. That's what he said, right? What? Excuse you? First of all, please get out of here. Don't come at me with this ignorance. He's departing from this thinking that, you have Arabs on one side and then you have Jews. Well, what does that even mean? You have Arab Jews and Arab Christians and Arab this and Arab that. You got Arabs of every flavor. Okay, it's not. These are not separate people or things, right? What the issue here is, you have Jewish settlers from Europe that are coming to Palestine and taking the land and doing this with the support of the UK and the US. That's a completely different thing. And the fact that he, and no one in mainstream, they continue to refuse to acknowledge this dynamic, and they keep trying to like take European anti-Semitism, where Europe, the Nazis were killing Jews and ethnically cleansing Jews. They were doing that, and then and in England and in Spain, you had centuries of anti-Semitism in Europe, and then trying to like take all of this guilt and all of this European anti-Semitism and then dump it on the Arabs every time they talk about Palestine. That's what he's doing, and what everybody in politics and in the media do in the West. They always try to make you think that the Arabs and the Palestinians are anti-Semites. No. What is? Do you even know what this word Semite means? Semite could be anyone. It could be an Assyrian. It could, right? So Syriacs. It could be Jews. It could be Arabs. Could anyone from this region who is a native to this region, to the Middle East, and speaks a Semitic language, qualifies as a Semite. European settlers, not really. I mean, just because they're, just because you persecuted them and tried to murder them doesn't mean that the rest of the world thinks like that. And certainly not, okay for you to dump that responsibility from Germany or whoever onto Palestinians. That's disgusting. But that's what he's doing, right? And this outrageous claim, like, oh, they're committed to the destruction of the Jewish people. Wow. It's like he's trying to write some kind of garbage novel. He's just making up fantasies. And I told you before, when the Spaniards in Spain, they kicked out the Arabs, right? The Reconquista, as they call it. The Spaniards kicked out the Muslims, and they kicked out the Jews, right? And who did the Jews go to? The Jews of Spain for refuge. They went to the Arab Muslims, right? In Andalusia. So we're talking about this region specifically, south of Spain. So if they're, quote unquote, according to RFK Jr., the Arabs are committed to the, quote unquote, destruction of the Jewish people, why did they give them refuge? This guy makes no sense. He's historically and politically illiterate, and I'm so shocked that he can understand the NATO issue and the Ukraine issue, but he doesn't understand this issue. I can't believe that. This guy comes from a reputable family, right? The Kennedy family. Wow. Right? JFK, one of the most popular presidents in the United States. One of the most famous American presidents in the world, in history. That's your uncle, man. Show some respect to yourself and your uncle and your family. Acknowledge the facts. Stop, reinventing history. And he says 1947, it's the Palestinians' fault because they walked away from a reasonable resolution. I think he called it, right? He said the word reasonable. And it's not reasonable. If I come into your house, your nice Kennedy, villa, and I start carving up your house, and I say, well, you can have the drawing room, I'll take the bathrooms, and maybe you can have this balcony, but I'll take the living room as well, and the, the kitchen and all. And then I tell you, here's the plan, sign it. That's reasonable? First of all, what the hell am I doing in your house? Right? Who the hell am I to impose this plan on you? And then you have people say, well, the United Nations came up with it. So what? What legitimacy does the United Nations have to do that? Palestine is not even a fucking member state. They didn't even give the Palestinians membership. They just have observer status, barely. But the Israelis get to be a full member. You have the UK, the US, Russia, China, and France. For some reason, France, who's had them in a power for centuries, getting veto power and becoming permanent members on the United Nations Security Council. Based on what? The UN is good in many ways and has a lot of faults. So just because the UN proposed this, what does that mean? Of course they walked away from it. If I come to your house and I try splitting up your house, and you're also going to walk away from that, you're going to fucking kill me too. You're going to kick me out of your house. In the United States, in some states, I think Florida is one of them, right? They have these stand your ground laws, right? Like if someone, you're in your house and someone comes in your house, you can blast them away. It's your right to do that. It's your house. There's an old English saying that we have, and every man's home is his castle. Right? So that's where this thinking stems from, perhaps. But, and the Ukrainians get HIMARS, the Ukrainians get drones, everything to kick the Russians out of their homes. But the Palestinians, they're terrorists and this and that. Man, we are tired of this. I'm tired of explaining this. I'm tired of this. What do you think the Palestinians are feeling, man? They're tired of that. And I just, the sad irony of him saying they don't go into the West Bank. Yeah, no, they do. They do. You know, Roger Waters, I wanted to just say a couple of words about him because he's, he's being subjected to, one of the most vicious campaigns in quite a while. So, he's a founding member of Pink Floyd, which is a very, very popular band, very successful. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's not exactly on good terms with the rest of them because I think one of the band members' wives started attacking him and so on. In any case, he's doing concerts on his own, right? As Roger Waters. And when he went to Berlin a few weeks ago, he did his concert as usual, and he likes to go on rants, right? And why not? By all means, please do. It's your, you have the mic and the podium. I'll play you a small clip, and I'll tell you a bit more about why this is related and why it's important.
It hurts. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to cancel any of you. I've watched other people being cancelled. Like a couple of years ago, I watched Jeremy Corbyn be cancelled by the Israeli lobby. That is what happened in 2019. And if it hadn't happened, we might have had the first decent Labour Prime Minister for a fucking the working class.
Oh, Jeremy Corbyn.
Okay. Anyway, I will be quick because I know you didn't come here to listen to this, but I didn't come here to tell you. If only I didn't have to tell you. If only these fuckers weren't trying to cancel me. But they are, and I'm not going to let them do it. I'm fighting back, all right?
Woo!
Oh, thank you.
Right, so he goes on and continues and talks about the Israeli lobby.
Now, this is the 81st show we've done, and we have done nothing but share our love for our fellow human beings, brothers and sisters, in all the places we've played, okay? So that's why I'm so pissed off about this Israeli lobby bullshit. Okay, so
yeah, so one of the ways they've been doing that is as I mentioned, through RFK Jr. And if you're going to run for president, you can't say anything nice about this guy. Another way they're doing it is they've launched a criminal investigation against him in Berlin, right? So basically, people were complaining to the police, and then the police said, well, he's again, this law it's funny because they use this law to do anything they like in Germany, right? It's basically I think it was two reasons. They said incitement of hatred, but the other one that I meant is the one that they basically you're riling people up. Right, you're riling the public up, and I think they did this with I forgot her last name, unfortunately. The German journalist Anna something, Lipp, right? Was it Anna Lipp? I did a video about her. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, they used the same thing against her, right? Like you're riling up the German people and the German public. Like you're trying to cause instability in the country. What the hell does that mean? This is so abstract and vague. It could mean anything. Right? What does that mean? Am I shorting the market? Am I telling people to dance naked in the streets? What does this mean, riling up the public or trying to cause, instability? It's wild. But they're trying to do it against him, and they're saying that, oh, well, he's an anti-Semite, he's a Jew hater, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's all because he's criticizing Israel. And I find this disgusting because the Israelis think that they can hijack, being Jewish. And it's like, why do they, keep in mind, Zionism is barely 100 years old as a political movement. Why do they get to decide, what it means to be Jewish? and then of course use their influence, you know, whether it's people in the Labour Party, as he was talking about, who are proudly you know, supporters of Israel, to attack Jeremy Corbyn, or whether in this case they attack Roger Waters. And you saw how, like, anyone praising him also gets attacked. It's kind of like sanctions, but with but in society, right? So they'll try to isolate someone and then attack anyone who has dealings with them, and then, you know, cut you off and make you feel alone. But I think the irony is that most people are you know, they find Israel deplorable. Israel is not the representative of Jews. They don't get to just label their critics anti-Semites. You know, it's outrageous. I mean, even Stanley Cohen and Miko Peled, who I've had on my show, who are Jews themselves, they also get called anti-Semites because they criticize Israel. This is madness. You know, there's no end to this. Everyone is an anti-Semite all of a sudden. You are diluting the meaning of this word for people who really deserve it, like Nazis, like you know, KKK, like people with actual anti-Semitic policies and thinking, and now you're applying it as a blanket term on people who are not anti-Semites and who are just criticizing a political ideology. And this does a huge disservice, first of all, to everybody's critical thinking skills. It's an insult to everyone's intelligence, and also you know, it does a huge disservice to the people who actually fight real anti-Semitism. You know, you use it so much that the word means nothing anymore. That's what the Israeli lobby does. And you know, the fact that you have so many people in the United Kingdom, in the United States, who don't know their own history, and what role you know, America and Britain have had in helping create and fund Israel, and what Israel does. This is shocking. This is really, really ignorance on a mass scale. It needs to be fixed, because they make the education system, the politicians make the education system, and the media, excuse me, they engineer them like this on purpose. So you don't know what your foreign ministry is doing. You don't know what your executive is doing. You don't know what the army is doing, or the intelligence services. You have no clue. And not just now, but also your own history. They want you to be ignorant. Don't allow them to make society, you know, don't allow them to dumb down society, because then you end up with things like this, where people who are speaking, you know, truth to power and saying things that need to be said are quote unquote cancel, whatever the hell that means. You know, the only people that need canceling are the ones that are murdering 2-year-old boys in the West Bank, or bombing Syria, or occupying Palestine, or, you know, invading countries and annexing them. Somehow, for some reason, we don't talk about that when the West does it or when Israel does it. But if it's Russia, we can talk about that all day, you know. Thank you, Pradesh, for the donation. It's good to see you again. Pradesh says, hi, Richard. I hope you're having a blessed day. Thank you. I am, and I hope you are as well. I think someone sent something earlier and I missed it, so give me a second just to scroll up. Excuse me again. That thing with RFK was kind of funny, right? Because I wanted to give the guy huge props for the NATO thing, what he said, and you know, about Bill Burns and all this stuff, and expanding NATO. But then when it comes to other foreign policy, he doesn't get it. And to me, this is very, very worrying, because you know, Trump kind of did the same thing. Trump was Trump, when it came to Syria, he was there's some interview, I showed it to you guys once. He was doing some breakfast morning show, and this is while he was running for president. And like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you know, he just like, he says the truth about Syria, that the United States, you know, trying to overthrow the government there, and Saudi Arabia's helping fund it too, the whole thing. And I'm like, wow, he floored me. And then of course, you know, he gets into office and he behaves just like Obama, just like Biden, all of them the same thing, you know, just like Bush. Nothing changes. In many ways, got worse. In many ways, it got worse. But that doesn't mean that that Biden is okay in comparison. No, they're so bad. It's like comparing, you know, there's no lesser of two evils. It's two devils. That's what you get. Marvin says, Richard, have you ever had Roger Waters on? Have again? I haven't had him on yet, but I will have him on soon, I hope. And everything I just discussed, I'd love to talk about with him as well. So thank you guys very much for all of your donations and kind comments, and I appreciate it very much. So, again, make some noise about Pablo González, because this guy needs he needs all the support that he can get, and I'm not gonna stop saying how shocked I am at the fact that he's been in solitary for like a year, over a year. So. That coupled with the fact that he isn't even told what he's accused of. I mean, they say espionage, but they don't tell him what exactly. I mean, come on, man. Even in a banana republic, I'm not saying Poland is anything like that, but I'm saying hypothetically, in the worst case, they still tell you what you've been charged with. And Poland is a marvelous country. It's an EU country. I expect better, and the problem here is not Poland. It's the Spanish government and I agree with Boye, or what he said, that Spain seems to be externalizing to Poland what it could not do in Spain. So the Spanish government don't like Pablo González reporting, so they kind of just cooked up a story, but they didn't arrest him in Spain. They just got Poland to do it because it's easier if he's not a citizen of that country, because he's Russian and Spanish. He's not Polish though. Then it becomes easier to do these things. He doesn't speak the language. He's not a citizen. He doesn't have family there. There's no one to help him. That's how they do it, right? But if it happened in Spain, it would be much harder for them to detain him and keep him in detention. One thing that I forgot to ask Boye, and I wish I had, because it was on my mind, is that where the hell are the Russians, right? Because he is half Russian. So where is his government? Why are they not lobbying for his release? What's going on? I mean, I obviously, I don't think they would get very far. And you guys saw what's happening between Poland and Russia with this embassy feud, right? Like, we're going to freeze your embassy's accounts. Okay, we're going to freeze yours too. We're going to take your embassy's money. Okay, we're going to take the school or whatever. I did a couple of videos on this. It's so petty, but with all that said, with that said, when everything's said and done, the Polish and the Russians, I think their relationship is probably at an all-time low. Certainly one of the lowest points. So I don't have much hope that they would be able to lobby for Pablo González release. On the other hand, Spain, which is on good terms with Poland, should be able to do that, and they should, if they were involved in any way in having gotten him arrested, or anything of that matter, I mean, that's just awful. That's just shocking, disgusting. Again, Spain's a beautiful country, amazing country, but you have a couple of people running the executive who just let the Americans do whatever they want, and then and America has nothing to do with this story, but in general, they let the Americans do whatever they want, and then when it comes to also other people internally that they don't like, they're also going to treat them like this, whether it's against Pablo González in this case, or other people that have been let down by their compatriots in the executive. That's unacceptable. Whether you like this person or not, 23 hours a day in solitary confinement, designated as a dangerous prisoner, accused of espionage for what? This is outrageous. That is so outrageous and unfair and unnecessary. Why don't you go hunt some real spies, like actual spies, instead of bullying a journalist? That's low. That's low behavior. In any case, go follow the page. It's called Free Pablo González, and I'm gonna put it up. Here. This is the Twitter, so go follow that, please, okay? And try and give him and his case some support. All right, very, very important that we do that. It's the least we can do. It's the least we can do. So
in any case, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and supporting the show. And I'm very, very grateful for the donations and all the kind help that you've lent the show. Again, even just liking the video and sharing it helps. By the way, there's one more I forgot here. Excuse me. This one was from Macarius. Pics of burning leopards will sell more Abrams. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But the thing is, I don't expect the Abrams to come anytime soon, because this was the Americans just they hoodwinked the British and the Germans. Really, that's what it was about. It was like, we want you to take the risk without us getting involved, but we're going to make you think that we are also sending tanks, so you feel better about yourselves. Hedi Lukil, thank you also for the sticker that you just sent. I appreciate it very much. And if there are people who are sending stuff on PayPal, I still have not gotten that fixed, and I'm sorry about that, but I will get it working as soon as I can, so that I can read your questions again and whatnot. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it very much. Take care of Masanami. Bye-bye.
Sweden wanted to join NATO. They broke with their decades-long neutral stance. Turkey was one of the only countries, I think, along with Hungary, that was saying, we're not going to let you in, because you need to have consensus, right? You need all the members in NATO to say, okay, you can join. Their bid has kind of been in limbo because Turkey wanted to, extract several concessions. It was very clear that they really want to join NATO in Sweden, and they were doing everything they could to appease the Turks. And then this moron comes in front of the Turkish embassy and burns the Quran. I understand that in their point of view, this is freedom of expression, and you're in Sweden, you can do whatever you like. But you have to remember that if you're trying to get Turkey support, maybe you wait until after you've gotten it. I mean, this is just dumb from a diplomatic level. They're doing everything to appease Turkey, and then because of one idiot, they let this go to waste. The Germans and the Americans have decided that it would be a good idea to send Ukraine tanks. German tanks against the Russian. Man, I'm perplexed by this. What do they think is going to happen? Because even if you can train the Ukrainian crews who are used to Soviet tanks to operate British tanks, and then you got to train them to operate German tanks, and then you got to train them to operate American tanks, and that's if they can even maintain the logistical supply line to work with these tanks, to keep them running. What kind of door are you opening now for the Russians to do? I mean, this is very clearly escalation. While Germany and the US are saying, yeah, we're going to give Ukraine tanks, the doomsday clock has been moved to 90 seconds to midnight. So this is basically, it's a measurement of how close we are to the end of the world, to the apocalypse, to annihilating the planet with nuclear weapons, right? And this is the closest it's ever been to midnight, okay? Midnight representing the end. Ukraine's most senior military commander has said that his forces need about 300 Western tanks. Over the last year, NATO allies in Eastern Europe supplied Ukraine with Soviet-era and Russian-made tanks that have been ground down or destroyed in constant fighting. Soviet-era and Russian-made tanks. Now, Ukraine, having been a Soviet satellite state and part of the Soviet Union, it was part of Russia, all of its military personnel being trained on Russian tanks. What do you think they're going to do with American tanks or German tanks, which they are not trained to operate? The Ukrainians know how to operate Russian tanks. That's all they know how to operate. The Ukrainians only use Soviet stuff, right? Until the last couple of years and until now. This is the first major influx of NATO weapons. And again, NATO has been training Ukrainian forces, but Challenger tanks, this is brand new. If they can't even use the tanks that they're trained to use, what makes you so confident they're going to know how to use a Leopard 2 or an M1A2 or a Challenger 2? Man, people train on those things for fucking months and years. Both of these home secretaries, okay, Suella Braverman and Priti Patel, both their parents came to the United Kingdom, and under their own laws as home secretary, they themselves would not have been able to come to the UK, to be born in the UK, and to have a life there. So, like, the hypocrisy is so disgusting, I got what I wanted, I'm okay, I'm secure, I can live in the UK, I'm the home secretary now I'm gonna shut the gates. now I'm gonna screw people that have literally nothing, that are so desperate they're, you know, risking drowning in the Channel or the Mediterranean Sea. People have to resort to risking drowning. They have to resort to, you know, hiding in trucks or swimming across the Channel, if everyone's ever done that, you know, crossing the Channel, because of her policies, because she forces people into doing that, right? So you literally have no choice. You have to be in the UK to begin the application. What are people supposed to do? Just teleport, you know, for 5 minutes, write down the form and just get out of the UK? This is ridiculous. She's a liar, just like the one, you know, her predecessor, Priti Patel. Why is Germany reluctant to give the Ukrainians tanks? That's a really tough one. I wonder why. Germany has long refused to send its most potent weapons to countries in conflict, a byproduct of its legacy of starting World War II and World War I. That's horse manure, because Germany does send weapons to countries in war. You know, Saudi Arabia is one of them. So to get around this, the trick that they use is they don't sell the tanks and you know, the ordnance directly to Saudi Arabia. They move it to Italy, and then from Italy they sell it to the Saudis. So they basically just insert a middleman, and that's how they get around this very, you know, honorable principle of theirs, which they never abide by. You know, if you go and you look up the Yemen war, I mean, you're going to see weapons from fucking everywhere. You know, the Canadians have been selling weapons and making money. Britain, the US, Australia, everyone. And the Germans are no exception. So I mean, the idea is true, but they fucking send weapons. They goddamn do. They do. Do you see how they move like snakes? Do you see how they move like snakes? They get the media to whisper in your ear, "Oh, don't go on strike. No, don't strike. Don't strike. It'll cripple the economy." Oh. No, it's not, you know, like giving the army 800 billion to fucking bomb, you know, 20 countries. That's okay. That money, we can spare that. But if you go on strike where, oh my god, we're gonna lose like 2 billion a day, well, we can't afford that. You know the Pentagon has been audited, I think 5 times now, and every single audit was failed. That means they don't know where the money's going. The Pentagon is like a black fucking hole that sucks trillions of dollars, and the government doesn't even know where the money's going. I can tell you where it's going. You don't need to audit the Pentagon. I can tell you, me, Richard Medhurst, that money is going towards drug deals, towards arms sales, towards arms purchases, towards CIA fucking budgets and embassy coffee. That's where that shit is going, man. That shit is going to the spooks. That shit's going to the bombers. That shit's going to the paramilitaries. That's where it's going. You don't need to scratch your head. That's where it's going. And apparently that's an acceptable loss. That's an acceptable use of American dollars and taxpayer dollars. But, you know, going on strike, oh, that's too much of an inconvenience. That's the fucking point, man. All right, guys. So actually, I was not done. There was one topic which is actually quite sad that I wanted to go through with you, and I felt something was off. I was like, oh my god, I forgot to talk about this. Okay, so let's go through this. So according to the Wall Street Journal, the United States are now going to provide Ukraine with depleted uranium tank shells. So just to explain what these are tank shells that look the same, but you know, when they're fired, they have better armor piercing capabilities. So basically, they can you know, blow up other tanks or other armored vehicles like an APC more easily, right? So the thing is, though, that if you look at what the United States have done, you know, everywhere they've used depleted uranium, it's like dropping a nuclear bomb, and actually worse in other ways, because with a nuclear bomb, it's a giant dose of radiation. I mean, you know, in one short period. But with depleted uranium, it stays there for much longer. Okay, and it lingers on for decades, literally. So, just to give you an example, in Fallujah in Iraq, the Americans, there are actually 3 battles of Fallujah, right? I think the one in 2004 was the worst. So the Americans, they dropped white phosphorus from you know, above, and also they used depleted uranium tank shells. And guess what? 10, 20 years later, there are people in Fallujah who are being born with cancer, and it's so bad that you have higher rates of birth defects and congenital heart disease in Fallujah than you do in Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
after, Nagasaki and Hiroshima were bombed with nuclear weapons. So can you imagine that it's even worse? I want to read you this. This is from a doctor in Fallujah, and she spoke with Al Jazeera. And keep in mind, this is in 2013, I believe, right? So she said that her name's Dr. Samir. Hold on, you can't see the document. Give me a second to pull it up. So there it is. Her name is Dr. Samira Alani, okay, and she's from Fallujah, and she said that this journalist who spoke with her said that it's according to her, it's common in Fallujah for newborns to come out with massive multiple systemic defects, immune problems, massive central nervous system problems, massive heart problems, skeletal disorders, babies being born with 2 heads, babies being born with half of their internal organs outside of their bodies, cyclops babies literally with 1 eye, really, really, really horrific, nightmarish types of birth defects. And this is true because I have looked at the photographs, and these are not old photographs. They're from now, right? This is happening now. It's been going on for many, many, many years, because people who are, in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, you knew that there was a nuclear explosion and you had to get the hell away from there if you could. The thing is, the people in Iraq didn't know what the Americans had put in the tank shells, and because there wasn't even a need to use them. I mean, because first of all, there shouldn't be, the Americans had no business being there in the first place at all. And on top of it, there were no other tanks. They were not fighting other tanks to even justify, from a military point of view, the use of depleted uranium, right? At least, and I'm still against it, but just from a military point of view, right now in Ukraine, they're actually fighting with tanks on both sides. This was not even the case in Fallujah, and they still use them, right? So that just goes to show how lax and careless they were. So, they dropped so much white phosphorus, they used so much depleted uranium. The people living there have no clue about this. The war is bad enough without knowing that, if you live there and you stay there, you're going to get cancer, and your kids are going to be born with these massive nightmarish birth defects. So people had no clue. They're finding out years later, right? Keep in mind, in Yugoslavia, another place that NATO, the United States, not really, it's not a big difference, but guess what? They also use depleted uranium here. This is from El Mayadeen. So I over the period of the aggression, the alliance dropped an estimated 15 tons of depleted uranium in bombs and shells, after which the country's oncology diseases spiked, ranking it the first in terms of cancer cases in Europe. Okay, so they're talking about Serbia, right? And they said that in the first 10 years following the heavy shelling, about 30,000 developed cancer, and estimations say that between 10 to 18,000 of them died. Okay, so when they say oncology, oncology is the study of cancer. Okay, so it means cancer. So that's what happened in Yugoslavia. Once again, thank you to Lockheed Martin and all these people, but at least they joined in the Pride Parade, right? At least they joined the Pride Parade. There's so much love in all of this depleted uranium usage. I can't handle it. This is what is so disgusting, is that they make you think that these companies actually care. Or that these politicians care about people. How the hell do you supposedly bring democracy to Iraq when you're giving people cancer, right? Or in the case of Yugoslavia, right? They carved it up and bombed Serbia, destroyed it, just like Iraq, and they used the same things. And now they want to bring this literally cancerous thing, depleted uranium, and use it in Ukraine. If you love Ukraine, if you care about Ukraine, depleted uranium is the last thing in the world that you would tell them to use, because guess who's going to suffer from that? The people in Ukraine, right? Like if their idea is to liberate Ukraine, right? Okay, let's say that they do. Tomorrow morning, Zelensky's going to emerge victorious over the Donbass and Crimea, and he's going to go have a nice parade, right? Guess what? all the people returning to their homes or all the people living there. I don't care what, where they're from, but in this case, their idea is, okay, it's going to be only Ukraine. You're going to give those people in Ukraine cancer because you use depleted uranium, because this stuff goes in the earth. It seeps into the earth, into the soil, into the water. You can't get rid of it. And Ukraine, man, I think Chernobyl was enough. Why do you why do you allow the Americans to give you this junk? Keep in mind, the United States, this is only now in June. If you ask me, and I'm assuming you are, they've been giving them depleted uranium since the beginning, right? They've been giving them the stuff. They've been stocking depleted uranium, not solely, but definitely of it and from it. For a long time. We are just hearing of it now. The United Kingdom, right? We have been giving Ukraine depleted uranium for months now, And again, this is just, in the public sphere. If you talk about reality, I think it's much longer than that. Here, let me show you what Putin said 2 months ago, right? When the UK began, at least publicly, giving depleted uranium.
Полагаем, что многие из положений, выдвинутого Китаем мирного плана, созвучны российским подходам и могут быть взяты за основу для мирного урегулирования, когда к нему будут готовы на Западе и в Киеве. Однако такой подход, пока такой готовности с их стороны мы не наблюдаем. В то время, когда мы с председателем обсуждали вопрос возможности реализации китайского плана мирного урегулирования, а председатель КНР уделил большое внимание своим мирным инициативам в ходе нашей вчерашней беседы с глазу на глаз, вот сегодня стало известно, что Великобритания устами заместителя главы Министерства обороны этой страны объявила не только о поставках танков на Украину, но и снарядов с объединенным ураном. Похоже, что Запад действительно решил воевать с Россией до последнего украинца уже не на словах, а на деле. Но хотел бы в этой связи отметить, что если все это будет происходить, то соответствующим образом Россия вынуждена будет реагировать, имея в виду, что коллективный Запад начинает применять уже оружие с ядерным компонентом.
Do you know what the British response to this was? The Ministry of Defense, the MOD, the next day said it's not true that uraniums are weapons of mass that tank shells with depleted uranium are weapons of mass destruction. That's not really the point. The point is, first of all, they are, but the point is that if you use them, you are going to kill not only the wildlife and the environment, but the people of Ukraine who come back to live there or live there already. The point is that this is an ecological and oncological disaster in the making, right? And they know what man, look. People have been studying the effects of depleted uranium shells for decades before I was even born. And if you and I know this and it's in the public domain, you think they don't know this? Of course they know this. They just don't give a crap. They don't care. They want to make money. It's like a store. They want to get rid of their stock, right? And send it to Ukraine so they can just buy more for their from their friends. All right, you got the so-called defense ministers, or in the US, the defense secretary. These guys literally come from these companies. The American defense secretary, Lloyd Austin, the day he took the job as defense secretary, he resigned as a board member at Raytheon. He literally comes from the weapons company to be promoted as defense secretary. What defense? This guy has no concept of defense. He has no interest in defense. The last thing on his mind is defense. This guy wants to make money for his friends and for himself. Money. You understand? It's about money, man. It's about oil. It's about bombs. That's who these people are. And then they get their so-called journalist friends, who are just basically the PR department of the weapons manufacturer to tell you, oh, it's about freedom and democracy. Oh my God, Yugoslavia, in Serbia, in Iraq, they're such dictators that we have to use depleted uranium, tank shells, and bombs. We just got to give them cancer. We care so much about the civilians there that we want to make sure that their children have massive birth defects. And now they're doing the same thing with Ukraine. They care so much about Ukraine that they want people in Ukraine to have cancer from the depleted uranium. Well done. You have destroyed and defied logic itself. Well done. Why don't you just drop a nuke? But again, as I said earlier, this is worse than a nuke because it lasts for decades, right? It's actually worse than a nuke. Truly. Because people don't even know that it's there. They have no clue that they're living next to things that are going to give them cancer and destroy their DNA and give their children massive birth defects. They don't even know that it's there. It's like a silent killer, and it lasts for so much longer. Okay, and if you needed any more assurances and convincing. Our dear Claudia is a biologist and a scientist herself, and she agrees with everything that I just said, and we talked about this before, and how heartbreaking it is. I thought that for anyone seeing what these depleted uranium shells did in Iraq and Yugoslavia would be enough to knock some sense into them, but apparently not. Apparently they just refuse to learn. They refuse to do anything decent for people in Ukraine. I mean, this is, like I said, right now, this war is taking place in Ukraine. It's not really, inside of Russia or, sometimes the drone strikes, but mainly in Ukraine. So the things the weapons you use will stay there for many decades. Why would you do this? Another thing is that even if you don't care about Ukraine and you don't care about Russia, let's say you are so selfish, you really, really only just care about your own country, and that's it. Well, guess what? The soldiers that are transporting this stuff, they might not be at such a risk, but the ones, if you're in a tank crew and you are driving around, you live with these things next to you, you are going to have higher rates of cancer. That's been proven. Right? That soldiers in tank crews especially, but again, these things can be dropped in the air, who live and and linger around these armaments and ordnances and payloads, they have higher rates of cancer. Here are some other examples. Forget the depleted uranium. Let's talk about Agent Orange. Right? In Vietnam, the Americans dropped so much of this stuff. It's basically napalm. It's a corrosive, disgusting, flammable mix. That if it's not like if you catch fire and you can put it out quickly. No. This stuff it sticks to your skin and it burns and burns and burns. That's how disgusting this is, and it does the same to everything, really, to every surface. That's what napalm is. And you have to think how beautiful Vietnam is. All the green. They destroyed it, right? Same thing, Cambodia. They set everything on fire, and they have such little respect for human life that their own soldiers, the American soldiers, developed diseases and cancer from Agent Orange, right? Agent Orange syndrome. So they don't even respect their own soldiers, right? They don't even respect their own soldiers. They you have tons of people, tons of Vietnam veterans. Don't take it from me. Just go ask them. Right? Even on the government's own website. Look, this is veterans on the VA's website, okay? Veterans Affairs is as many people know, and they don't have a great reputation of actually taking care of veterans. They'll take better care of Lockheed Martin than they will of you. But here, look this on the U.S. government's own website, okay, on the VA's website. Here's a list of diseases associated with Agent Orange, and they go through bladder cancer, leukemia, diabetes. You know, it's a long list. It's a nasty list. Prostate cancer, respiratory cancer. Vietnam didn't drop these bombs on the U.S. The arms dealers gave these weapons to the Americans, and they dropped so much of it that they even, it even hurt their own soldiers. And the same thing is, in the Gulf War, you had that's another story. But Gulf War syndrome, you got tons of people living with various, illnesses from that. And then now depleted uranium. Yeah. They don't care about you, man. They don't care about you. This is bad for the environment, obviously. That doesn't even need stating. And it's bad for human beings, and it's bad for wildlife, for everyone. But it's good it's good if you manufacture it. It's very good, right? Very, very good if you make money from war. So this is sad. This shows you how much they care about Ukraine. Not 1 inch. Not 1 inch. They have no respect. And it's so disgusting watching the British media try to paint Putin as like, oh, he's some kind of liar because he criticized us for giving Ukraine depleted uranium. Who the hell cares if his name is Putin or Mario? Why don't you talk about the goddamn depleted uranium? Can we not find one journalist at the BBC? Why are they so void of any logic or journalistic ethics? It's nothing. A barren wasteland of morons. That's it. That's all I had to say. I'm angry. I'm really fuming about this. This is we are witnessing something else, man. We are so lucky in many ways. We have so much knowledge at our fingertips. We can look up anything in the world, right? Mathematics, history, geography, you name it. And despite all of the data that we have, the scientific data, the photographic evidence, the proof of what these weapons do there. No, let's keep using them. It's like as if the regular war wasn't bad enough. They got to spice it up with some, uranium. I don't even know what to say about these people anymore. I'm done. Thank you guys for tuning in, and please share these videos. Let people hear the truth. Let them, first of all, the interview I did with Boye, let them find out about Pablo's case, and please, about this uranium stuff. I'm fuming. I really am. Thank you guys for tuning in, and again, if you are not subscribed, please make sure you are. Actually, even if you were subscribed, sometimes YouTube unsubscribe people, so please double check you are. Many of you have told me that in the comments that you were suddenly unsubscribed. And also another thing, if you want to receive a notification when I go live, there's a bell, picture of a bell icon that you can click on. And if you would rather get an email notification, then you can go to richardmedhurst.substack.com. So that's it's literally that simple. It's just a form, and you type your email and hit subscribe. That's it. I don't spam people. I'm not interested in that. When I go live, you get a link. That's it. Couldn't be more simpler. Okay, so it couldn't be simpler. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate it, and take care. All right, bye-bye.
Sweden wanted to join NATO. They broke with their decades-long neutral stance. Turkey was one of the only countries, I think, along with Hungary, that was saying, we're not going to let you in, because you need to have consensus, right? You need all the members in NATO to say, okay, you can join. Their bid has kind of been in limbo because Turkey wanted to, extract several concessions. It was very clear that they really want to join NATO in Sweden, and they were doing everything they could to appease the Turks. And then this moron comes in front of the Turkish embassy and burns the Quran. I understand that in their point of view, this is freedom of expression, and you're in Sweden, you can do whatever you like. But you have to remember that if you're trying to get Turkey support, maybe wait until after you've gotten it. I mean, this is just dumb from a diplomatic level. They're doing everything to appease Turkey, and then because of one idiot, they let this go to waste. The Germans and the Americans have decided that it would be a good idea to send Ukraine tanks. German tanks against the Russian. Man, I'm perplexed by this. What do they think is going to happen? Because even if you can train the Ukrainian crews who are used to Soviet tanks to operate British tanks, and then you got to train them to operate German tanks, and then you got to train them to operate American tanks, and that's if they can even maintain the logistical supply line to work with these tanks to keep them running. What kind of door are you opening now for the Russians to do? I mean, this is very clearly escalation. While Germany and the US are saying, yeah, we're going to give Ukraine tanks, the doomsday clock has been moved to 90 seconds to midnight. So this is basically, it's a measurement of how close we are to the end of the world, to the apocalypse, to annihilating the planet with nuclear weapons, right? And this is the closest it's ever been to midnight, okay? Midnight representing the end. Ukraine's most senior military commander has said that his forces need about 300 Western tanks. Over the last year, NATO allies in Eastern Europe supplied Ukraine with Soviet-era and Russian-made tanks that have been ground down or destroyed in constant fighting. Soviet-era and Russian-made tanks. Now, Ukraine, having been a Soviet satellite state and part of the Soviet Union, it was part of Russia, all of its military personnel being trained on Russian tanks. What do you think they're going to do with American tanks or German tanks, which they are not trained to operate? The Ukrainians know how to operate Russian tanks. That's all they know how to operate. The Ukrainians only use Soviet stuff, right? Until the last couple of years and until now. This is the first major influx of NATO weapons. And again, NATO's been training Ukrainian forces, but Challenger tanks, this is brand new. If they can't even use the tanks that they're trained to use, what makes you so confident they're going to know how to use a Leopard 2 or an M1A2 or a Challenger 2? Man, people train on those things for fucking months and years. Both of these home secretaries, okay, Suella Braverman and Priti Patel, both their parents came to the United Kingdom, and under their own laws as home secretary, they themselves would not have been able to come to the UK, to be born in the UK, and to have a life there. So like the hypocrisy is so disgusting, like I got what I wanted, I'm okay, I'm secure, I can live in the UK, I'm the home secretary now I'm gonna shut the gates. Now I'm going to screw people that have literally nothing, that are so desperate they're, risking drowning in the Channel or the Mediterranean Sea. People have to resort to risking drowning. They have to resort to, hiding in trucks or swimming across the Channel, if everyone's ever done that, crossing the Channel because of her policies, because she forces people into doing that, right? So you literally have no choice. You have to be in the UK to begin the application. What are people supposed to do? Just teleport, for 5 minutes, write down the form and just get out of the UK? This is ridiculous. She's a liar, just like the one, her predecessor, Priti Patel. Why is Germany reluctant to give the Ukrainians tanks? That's a really tough one. I wonder why. Germany has long refused to send its most potent weapons to countries in conflict, a byproduct of its legacy of starting World War II and World War I. That's horse manure, because Germany does send weapons to countries in war. Saudi Arabia is one of them. So to get around this, the trick that they use is they don't sell the tanks and the ordnance directly to Saudi Arabia. They move it to Italy, and then from Italy they sell it to the Saudis. So they basically just insert a middleman, and that's how they get around this very, honorable principle of theirs, which they never abide by. If you go and you look up the Yemen war, I mean, you're going to see weapons from fucking everywhere. The Canadians have been selling weapons and making money. Britain, the US, Australia, everyone. And the Germans are no exception. So I mean, the idea is true, but they fucking send weapons. They goddamn do. They do. Do you see how they move like snakes? Do you see how they move like snakes? They get the media to whisper in your ear, "Oh, don't go on strike. No, don't strike. It'll cripple the economy." Oh. No, it's not, like giving the army 800 billion to fucking bomb, 20 countries. That's okay. That money, we can spare that. But if you go on strike where, oh my God, we're going to lose like 2 billion a day, well, we can't afford that. The Pentagon has been audited, I think 5 times now, and every single audit was failed. That means they don't know where the money's going. The Pentagon is like a black fucking hole that sucks trillions of dollars, and the government doesn't even know where the money's going. I can tell you where it's going. You don't need to audit the Pentagon. I can tell you, me, Richard Medhurst, that money is going towards drug deals, towards arms sales, towards arms purchases, towards CIA fucking budgets and embassy coffee. That's where that shit is going, man. That shit is going to the spooks. That shit's going to the bombers. That shit's going to the paramilitaries. That's where it's going. You don't need to scratch your head. That's where it's going. And apparently that's an acceptable loss. That's an acceptable use of American dollars and taxpayer dollars. But, you know, going on strike, oh, that's too much of an inconvenience. That's the fucking point, man.